Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Wednesday, October the 11th, 2023. Today there are three things I want to talk about. Firstly, I want to talk about the fact that Pluto is going stationary direct today. In fact, it went stationary direct yesterday if you're in the Americas. Second thing I want to look at is the horoscope of Palestine. I looked at this chart yesterday and I want to look at it again today because I want to talk about some stuff relating to the Mars-Saturn square in that chart, which I didn't really pick up on before. Thirdly, I want to talk about the asteroid London. I had a discussion with one of the commenters on this YouTube channel about this asteroid, and I looked at this asteroid, and I came up with some stuff about it which I thought was quite interesting. I also want to briefly mention my overall approach to asteroids. But before I do all that, I want to look at today's astrology, the astrology for today, which is Wednesday, October the 11th, 2023. So let's look at the chart for today. As always, set for noon at New York, set for noon in New York. There we go. Wednesday, October the 11th, 2023. So what's the main thing going on? It's an aspect between the moon and Jupiter. You can see that the moon is in Virgo and Jupiter is in Taurus, and at noon New York time, the moon is pretty much exactly trine Jupiter. So what does that mean? It's good news. Jupiter is a planet of good luck. The moon is making a trine to Jupiter, and so things should really work well, especially on a material level. It's a good day for reorganizing our material environment. So if there's something about our material environment we don't like, now might be a good time to fix it. We'll be very focused on material details, and there might be a detail we notice that we can actually benefit from. So overall, I think it's pretty good, that moon trine Jupiter. I mean, normally when you think of moon trine Jupiter, you think of something quite excessive, perhaps on an emotional level. I don't think this moon trine Jupiter is particularly excessive. I mean, Jupiter is in Taurus. Taurus is quite a slow sign. It's materialistic, but it doesn't like to do things in a hurry. And likewise, moon in Virgo may not be slow, but it's sensible. And so the way we can expand forward is by addressing ourselves to material details. So that's the main thing going on today. Of course, Pluto is going stationary direct. Now, you can look at Pluto going stationary direct on a sort of long-term level, or you can look at it on a more sort of short-term perspective. So from a short-term perspective, how does that affect today if Pluto is stationary direct? See, there it is. Pluto, used to have a sort of R next to it to show that it was retrograde, but that R has now gone. That means Pluto is now moving forward. Now I'm going to cover the long-term aspects of Pluto going direct a bit later on in this video, but as far as the shorter term is concerned, what does it mean today? I think many of us are going to think that, or feel that now is the time for change. Perhaps it's a situation where we had been planning on making a change for some time, maybe for months, but somehow we just hadn't got it together. And today, now that Pluto's direct, we're going to think, hold on, something needs to change. Let's do it now. Why wait any longer? And change, may not be a strong enough word, because when you're talking about Pluto, you're supposed to be thinking total transformation, totally changing things around 180 degrees. So can we do this today? Okay, maybe not today, maybe tomorrow, but, we can't wait any longer. And there may be a certain urgency, or we might feel there's a certain urgency in terms of creating this change. As far as the 12 signs are concerned, I've done my forecasts for the 12 signs for today. So here they are. These are my star sign forecasts for Wednesday, October the 11th, 2023. Aries. Mars, your ruler, is now in the last degree of Libra, getting ready to move into Scorpio. It's a time to do some clearing up, and in relationships there may be unfinished business. And if there is someone you've upset, now would be a great time to apologize. Also, it's a good day for planning and organization. Taurus. You're feeling better. Some of the pressure that's been building up since the weekend is starting to fade, and your efforts to change and improve the overall situation are likely to be successful. And what counts is your fundamental optimism. In relationships, partners are not yet ready to make a decision. Gemini. You can keep your thoughts to yourself. People aren't going to be listening, and you might find that your words and actions go down the wrong way. Yet your mind is moving into interesting areas, even if you can't discuss it, and perhaps you shouldn't discuss it, because early disclosure could spoil the magic. Cancer. The moon, your ruler, is making a trine aspect to Jupiter. As a result of this aspect, you'll be luckier than usual, and the things you do are likely to be very successful. But don't feel that you have to take the weight of the world onto your shoulders. Other people, in particular your friends, are there for you. Leo. Today is sensible, but also fortunate. The moon, while moving through the finance zone of your solar chart, is aspecting Jupiter. You make your financial demands clear in a way that isn't off-putting. Also, you're good at discussing financial issues in a calm and rational way, and as a result, you can arrive at some important conclusions. Virgo. Today, you're pretty sensitive, in the sense that you can almost do a chemical analysis of the air you breathe and the food you eat. And if something feels bad or toxic, I think you'll be the first to notice. And it's all right to take immediate action to safeguard your health and well-being. Elsewhere, your spiritual energies are finely tuned. Libra. Someone is getting ready to leave, and this might be a good thing, Perhaps one particular person has been irritating and their departure could make you feel a whole lot better. Yet if you want to stay in touch with people, you have to make the effort. Some people move, other people disappear. On a different note, you're expected to be sensible and down to earth. So it might be a good idea to fit in with other people's expectations. Scorpio, you can benefit in so many ways from other people, but there's a danger that you miss your chance. So think again about the situation, especially as the moon is making a fantastic aspect to Jupiter. It's a time when you benefit from someone's generosity, and through social contacts you can realize that some of your ambitions are not as crazy as they sound. Sagittarius, at work and in business there is a certain amount of flux, things changing from one moment to the next, and it may be unclear whether the situation is good or bad. But the moon aspects Jupiter in Taurus, suggesting that things are looking good and that the door to future gains is half open, and perhaps now it just needs a small push. Capricorn, change is back on the table. Over the last few months, you might have felt that things were on hold, but today you may get the feeling that transformation is back on the agenda, and you're helped by a favourable aspect between the moon and Jupiter in earth signs. The material world is your garden, and you can start planting, pruning, and weeding. Aquarius, there are some emotions that need to be worked through. And I don't mean this in a negative sense. You have to ask yourself why you feel the way you do about particular areas of your life. Deep emotions can be interesting, but they are not necessarily useful. In a safe, secluded place, things become clear and the future starts looking up. Pisces, you want to make an impression on people. Perhaps because you have got something important to say, or you want to get everyone excited about some idea or plan. You can be successful provided you make the most of everything you've got. And someone out there can help you get in touch with the right people. So having looked at the astrology for today, I want to look at the I Ching. I threw 3 coins in the air, and I asked the question, what is Wednesday going to be like for people watching this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram 33, retreat. It's not a great hexagram. It's about accepting that we're in the wrong place. It's about accepting that in spite of our best efforts, we have to back off. So that is something we've got to do. I remember in 2016, I asked the I Ching what was going to happen with Britain's Brexit referendum on whether Britain was going to leave the European Union, and I got 33, and 33 really did suggest that Britain was going to want to retreat out of the European Union. So yes, so if you're involved in something that's just too much, I think you probably know what it is. It's time to leave. I don't think you've got a choice. Now there is a moving line. The third line moves. This third line also isn't great. It's about being bound up. We have to leave. We don't have a choice, and the I Ching kind of suggests we have to leave in chains. I would interpret that as saying that, well, we might not be sure whether or not we should leave, but certainly the people around us are very clear that it's time to retreat, and we don't have a choice in the matter. It's almost like we're being forced to leave. It is for the best, but the circumstances in which we are having to retreat are just not ideal. So overall, it's a bad situation. And this, this third line moving, so that means we transition to another hexagram, and the hexagram we stand still isn't really much better. It's hexagram 12, which is standstill. Heaven, this represents heaven. It's above, it's retreated, and the earth is left on its own. Maybe you could say, well, the powers of evil are in the ascendancy, but we can just say it just comes to a standstill. We have to get out, and after that, everything's at a standstill, can't move. The Wilhelm I Ching, it says standstill, but in parentheses it has stagnation. Things are just not going to happen. So, although it's not good, I was asking about today. I wasn't asking about the next year or the next decade. It's just like, today's not going to be great. So, there is the question, how does that fit in with the astrology? Well, astrologically, Moon was trine Jupiter. That seemed good, but Pluto coming. Maybe Pluto, the fact that we're getting this when Pluto is stationary direct, yes, we might have big plans for transforming our world, but right now, are we actually able to put these plans into action? Possibly not, which kind of contradicts what I've just said when I was looking at the astrology. So I think the I Ching is far more negative than the astrology is. I'm not saying which one is right, which one is wrong. I think that the I Ching is just giving further information, about the background. Maybe it's the other way around. Maybe astrology is giving the background to the I Ching. But I don't think we can expect much to happen today. And if things go wrong, we have to be ready to get out. And if we don't want to get out, other people are going to force us out anyway. So overall, I Ching does not think it's going to be a great day. I now want to go back to the astrology, and I want to continue on the theme of Pluto. Now, top right, this planet is not the moon. That's actually Pluto. I know it looks like the moon, but that is the planet Pluto. And yes, it is stationary direct. So what does this mean in a sort of a longer term, from a longer term perspective? So a few months ago, Pluto was in Aquarius. It moved into Aquarius. And you have to remember, Pluto is a very slow-moving planet. It stays in a sign for, well over 10 years, 15 years. It can stay in a sign for a long time. And Pluto in a sign just gives us the whole sort of social and cultural backdrop of the time in which we're living. And so the fact that Pluto is going direct means that now Pluto is going to go back into Aquarius. Okay, not immediately, but early next year, January of next year, Pluto will be back in Aquarius. So we must be ready for this change. Pluto in Aquarius. I've talked about this before in a video, but Pluto in Aquarius has its problems. Pluto in Aquarius can be about the state, the totalitarian state, using its force to get its way. The last time Pluto was in Aquarius was at the end of the 18th century. It happened around just latter part of the American Revolution, French Revolution. Pluto was in Aquarius. We get the idea of year zero. Someone trying to say this is the beginning. We're in a new age. We're in a new cycle, and the past, we can say goodbye to the past. The power of government. American Revolution. I know you think it's all sort of happy and whatever, but the American government wants to be in control and wants to use technology to get its way. George Washington, I think he was a great president, but there was a thing called the Whiskey Rebellion, where people, I think it was about taxation of whiskey, and as soon as, George Washington was in power as president, that Whiskey Rebellion got smashed. And I think it was over taxation. The same reason that the revolutionaries got rid of the British. This time of revolution, might sound idealistic, but you have to think what happens when the revolutionaries take power. They want control. They want to use the power of the state to get their way, and this is what Aquarius is about. So we should not be excited about Aquarius. Aquarius is about, things like digital currency, using technology to keep track of people, telling people what they can and can't buy, and, maybe even controlling, trying to control what people think. So that's what we've got to look forward to. There is also going to be a rebellion against that. But so, which side of a rebellion are you going to be on? Are you going to be the person who sticks their head above a parapet and fights for something and takes a risk? So that's what we've got to look forward to. But of course, Pluto is not quite in Aquarius yet. And even when Pluto does go into Aquarius next year, in about a year's time, it actually goes back into Capricorn one more time. So the sort of Pluto in Aquarius doesn't really establish itself until the end of next year. But now with Pluto absolutely still, about to, it's that sort of stillness before the action. It is stationary, as I mentioned quite recently, very close to the position Pluto was at when America declared independence on July the 4th, 1776. So right now is America's Pluto return, and I do think that this Pluto return is ongoing. If you looked at England's Pluto return for the 1550s, it sort of finished during the reign of Mary I, at a time when Protestants were being persecuted. But just because it had finished didn't mean that the movement was over. Mary went and died, and Elizabeth I took over, and then the situation got reversed, and it was Catholics suddenly being persecuted. And so, that's not going to happen this time round. But what Pluto going direct reminds us of is the fact that in America, in the United States, you've got two groups of people that cannot abide each other, at least on a philosophical and political sense, and will do whatever it takes to shut each other up. And I think I mentioned this, when we were talking about what's going on with in the House of Representatives. This deadlock about who's going to be Speaker. One Speaker getting removed because he had been bipartisan, because he tried to reach out to the other side of the House. And I think certainly from an American perspective, Pluto going direct is going to be very strong. Just to remind you, this is the horoscope for Pluto going direct. I've set this for England, so if you're in London, Pluto goes direct it goes direct at 2:10 a.m. today, Wednesday. So if you're in the Americas, it would have been yesterday, the 10th, that Pluto went direct. So this is a chart for Pluto going direct. So yeah, it's really about the fact that, to my mind, it's okay. America aside, it's simply about the fact that Pluto is very soon going to go into Aquarius, and the moment Pluto goes into Aquarius, it makes a conjunction to the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. So just around 3 years ago, on December the 21st, 2020, Jupiter and Saturn were exactly conjunct. And they were exactly conjunct at 0 degrees 29 Aquarius. Now, I want to have a whole video on this conjunction, but very briefly, every 20 years we get a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, which kind of sets the tone for the next 20 years. And this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, it sort of happened in the middle of COVID, and I think that Russia's invasion of Ukraine was very much part of this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. I associate that, Aquarius, if you take a Ptolemaic view, Ptolemy, this astrologer, astronomer, geographer, writing nearly up around 2,000 years ago, he linked Aquarius with Russia. And so that's really where the action is. And I think that, when Pluto goes into Aquarius in January, it triggers this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. If you look at the time of a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, you had articles in the mainstream news about this conjunction, and then the conjunction went away, and people said, oh, well, that's happened, let's move on. No, we can't move on. This conjunction is a 20-year thing, and its impact has only just started. And so with Pluto going into Aquarius next year, we're going to start really seeing how this conjunction is going to manifest. And it's got a lot to do with Russia, as well as having a lot to do with technology and power and governments actively trying to control our lives. But I will be talking about that in more detail in another video. Now, this Pluto going direct, it's going to influence different people in different ways, and I've just said that it's going to influence the United States. But one place it certainly is likely to influence is my next topic, which is Palestine. Now, I looked at this chart yesterday, and I made certain observations, but you can see that if we take November the 15th, 1988 at 12:40 a.m., and I set this at Algiers. Now, Algiers is not actually in Palestine, but that's where the declaration was made. And the moon was at 28:20 at the time of that declaration. In other words, Pluto is going stationary direct right on Palestine's moon, and now it's and then, now when it moves forward, it's going to be exactly conjunct Palestine's moon. What does that mean? Well, in astrology, the moon is the people. It's not Hamas. It's not, the people controlling Gaza, for example. It's ordinary people. And this Pluto going over the moon is likely to be sort of a major sort of transformation. And I mean, if you were Hamas, how would you relate to this? Is this good? I'm not convinced it necessarily would be good. Hamas may have been in control of Gaza for a long time. Of course, we should say with Palestine, there are kind of two territories in Israel or around Israel that are Palestine. There's the West Bank, and then there's the Gaza Strip. So I suppose this chart represents both of them. But the moon is being hit by Pluto, and I suppose the people could be restless. If we think we don't hear the word so much. Remember the word intifada, which was a sort of Palestinian uprising against the Israeli state. And so, Pluto conjunct the moon might be some kind of intifada, perhaps focused on the Israeli state, perhaps people not caring whether they live or die. But maybe that transformation, that mobilization of the people may not be focused just on the Israeli state. It may be focused on Hamas themselves. But given what's been happening in Palestine over the last few days, Pluto on the moon is also likely to be quite deadly. And we've already had a lot of Palestinians being killed in Israeli bombings. So again, Pluto on the moon, that fits perfectly. But as far as what else I wanted to talk about, I did have a comment on my interpretation of the Palestine chart, which I just want to read to you. So Anastasia Fontana commented this. She said, talking about the Palestinian chart, there is also Uranus at 29 degrees 12 minutes of Sagittarius on the anaretic degree, acting unpredictably, which could be considered as a conjunction with Saturn at 0 degrees of Capricorn and square to Mars in the first degree of Aries on Palestine's chart, also indicating sudden, unexpected actions triggering in a malefic way the square between Mars and Saturn. So I think she made a really good point, and it was just something I didn't bring up yesterday, and so I want to kind of go over it again. Now, when we are talking about an anaretic degree, that relates to the last degree of a sign, my understanding of it. So you can see that Palestine has its Uranus in the last degree of Sagittarius. And that is often seen as being unfortunate. And yes, as Anastasia said, it can be unpredictable. But I think that there are other reasons why this could be unpredictable, and that relates to the Aries point. So the Aries point, so 0 degrees Aries, you can see that obviously November the 15th, 1988, Mars was pretty close to 0 degrees Aries. Saturn at 0 degrees 16 Capricorn was also close to 0 degrees Aries by square. See, Saturn is square the Aries point. But if you take this point here, 0 degrees Capricorn, you can see that Uranus, yes, is on this anaretic degree. It's the last degree of Sagittarius. But Saturn and Uranus are either side of the Aries point, with Mars making the square. So I can show that in a 90-degree dial. So the 90-degree dial is often used by the midpoint astrologers, and Vita, Eberton, and so forth, used more commonly before the advent of computers. But this puts the planets in a position where everything that is conjunct, square, or opposition is in the same place. Anything that is semi-square or sesquiquadrate is treated as an opposition. So you can see that Mars, Saturn, Uranus, which were square, they're all now in one place, and they're all on the Aries point. The Aries point is 90. So we can see this is the Aries point, and we can see that the Aries point is on the Mars-Saturn midpoint. It's on and it's also on the, in fact, Mars-Saturn midpoint. It's on the Mars-Uranus midpoint, and it's on the Saturn-Uranus midpoint. So you've got the Aries point is seriously under pressure. And so this is the point where Palestine comes into existence. The Aries point represents the world at large. So world at large, Mars-Saturn on the Aries point. That's about death. It's about it's about a lot of people dying, and so whether it's the fault of Palestinians, whether it's the fault of Israel, the entity of Palestine is something which in itself is attracting death and destruction, and this is hard baked into the horoscope. Also, the Aries point is on the Mars-Uranus, midpoint. Mars-Uranus is just bombs, explosions, gunfire. That's Mars-Uranus. It's always there. It's always in the chart. Likewise, Aries is on the Saturn-Uranus midpoint. That's that incredible tension. So the Aries point being on Saturn-Uranus, Mars-Saturn, and Mars-Uranus, that's not good. And it's just always in the chart. And so we can look at that. We can look at that Uranus. We can look at it as being on an anaretic degree. We can also look at it as being very close to the square of the Aries point. And with Saturn, Saturn and Uranus are sort of on either side of 0 degrees Capricorn, and so that instability is it's baked into the Palestine chart. And so if we take this as a valid chart for Palestine, it's really not good. So Hamas might be excited about what they've done with this invasion of Israel, but it's not going to work out with that chart. And remember, the planet Uranus is moving towards the opposition of Palestine's sun. It's also moving towards a conjunction of Israel's sun. So from a Palestine perspective, it's not looking good. I mean, I said that yesterday, but so I just wanted to mention that, and thank you, Anastasia, for pointing it out. I didn't go into enough detail yesterday on Palestine's chart. Finally, I want to talk about asteroids, in particular the asteroid London. I was having a sort of discussion on the comments on the YouTube on this channel with a commenter called Medway Hospital Protest, and Medway Hospital protest started talking about asteroids. Now, I have a real problem with asteroids. I do not like using asteroids. I do not use asteroids. I don't really like using Chiron. Ever since I started, since the 80s when I started practicing astrology, I have just always avoided asteroids, and I maintain asteroids are highly problematic because you are cluttering the chart. You run the risk of being able to explain everything. They're just because there are so many asteroids, and so if you can't find what you're looking for, you can always just find an asteroid, and it seems to me, I don't know, it just encourages sort of sloppiness in astrology. And actually, I think it actually strips away the magic from astrology, using asteroids. That might sound strange, but if you've just got so many bodies that you can use to explain things, you can basically end up being able to explain everything. So that was my view, and so London Medway Hospital protest suggested I use asteroids, and in particular an asteroid called London, because she said, London was on her midheaven. She'd worked in London for a long time, and it really, really worked for her. And I took exception to that. I mean, if you think about it, London is a tiny asteroid. It was, in fact, it's asteroid number 8837, and it was, I think it was discovered on October the 7th, 1989. And if you think about it logically, let's say you allow half a degree orb for this asteroid. That means that 1 in 720 people have this asteroid on the midheaven. And if you think about, I don't know, say you've got 15 or 20 million people who think they've got an association of London, you're probably going to have 20,000 people who have got this asteroid on their midheaven at any time. So it just didn't seem to be a good idea. And, that was my view, and I told her what I thought. And then I thought about it again, and I thought, okay, let's look at it from a different point of view. How are we going to establish whether this asteroid works? This asteroid called London, asteroid 8837. How are we going to establish if it actually works? So I would ask two questions. You have to ask two questions. Firstly, what does the midheaven mean? What is the midheaven? Okay, the midheaven in astrology is connected with one's job, where one is going with one's life. Secondly, let's see if it works. So let's take the number, let's take Mr. London. Which living person in England is most associated with London? Now, that might not be a question you can answer if you're a Londoner, if you're not a Londoner. But there is actually only one answer to that question. There's only one person who really is the personification of London, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, I have my own perhaps historical bias. When I moved to London I've spent probably 10 years of my life in London, on and off. Obviously, I don't live in London anymore. I'm living in Washington State in the United States. But yeah, when I moved to London, London was run by the Greater London Council. And the head of the Greater London Council was Ken Livingstone. And Ken Livingstone really was Mr. London. I remember at the time he was great. He seemed to represent the people of London. If you go to London, you'll notice that transport is really expensive. And what he tried to do this amazing thing called Fares Fair, where he used GLC money to to subsidise public transport. And so suddenly it was really cheap to travel by public transport, whether it was a tube, bus, and he was very much associated with London. Of course, Margaret Thatcher got rid of the Greater London Council, and then they brought in London got a mayor, and the first mayor of London was Ken Livingstone. So Ken Livingstone, if there's anyone out there who's Mr. London, it's got to be him. There's no one else it can be. So if this asteroid London works, then you would expect this asteroid to really be strongly configured in his horoscope. Now, I'm not looking at any other chart. Okay, what about Boris Johnson? What about Sadiq Khan? They are not on Ken Livingstone's level. Ken Livingstone is the personification of London, as far as I'm concerned. So this was, in a sense, my way of sort of testing this concept that the asteroid London might work. And so this is Ken Livingstone's horoscope. Now, this program Kepler, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I can't get it to show the asteroid London. But you will see that here's Ken Livingstone's midheaven, which is 28 degrees 8 minutes Scorpio. That assuming he really was born at 5 past midnight on June the 17th, 1945. So where was the asteroid London on June the 17th, 1945, 12:05 a.m.? It was at, wait for it, 28 degrees 34 minutes Scorpio. So it was within half a degree of Ken Livingstone's midheaven. And what I found kind of amazing was that, when I was having this discussion with Medway Hospital protest, I was thinking, Ken Livingstone, if this works, he'll have this asteroid London on his midheaven. And amazingly, yes, he does. So perhaps I owe Medway Hospital protest an apology, because that is pretty amazing. The only thing, that was my second thought, but then my third thought was, okay, is it possible that the person who named the asteroid London had Ken Livingstone's horoscope and saw what their midheaven was and thought, oh, they found an asteroid at 28 at this particular point, and they called it London so that it would fit, so that it would be on Ken Livingstone's midheaven. I mean, we'd have to check this one out, but I'm sure that's not the case. I don't know. There's not a great deal of information about the asteroid London, so I think this may show that maybe the asteroid London, certainly in this limited circumstance, in this limited case of Ken Livingstone, the person who most personified London of all. I thought that was pretty amazing. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say for today. Thank you for listening, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.